Hello and welcome to Property Matters. 40 minutes of lively chat and debate around all matters property, designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in property. Property Matters is supported by Fairview International and also by Town and Country Property Auctions London. Despite it being the holiday season, property is never far from the news, and as always, we have a full and packed show for you today. And your thoughts and comments are always welcome, either below the video here, of course, or via our email, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. It is the new year, and we wish a very happy new year to our resident property expert, Joe Joshi, who has a new look for the new year.
Well, happy new year, Paul, and happy new year to you all that are watching and awake on this first Sunday of 2021. The line would have been very welcome, Paul, but thank you for that sort of prod to say, get up and get on with your work, Mr. Joshi. And here I am with my new temporary look. Only because the razor couldn't get to me quick enough this morning. So I thought, I'll just go with it and just share that the face has had a little bit of a rest, and we'll be back to normal maybe next week going on forward. But yeah, Happy New Year. And it looks like we got plenty to chat about as always. And I'm sure you've got a series of tables and things that you've been quietly working away on.
Well, some things never change despite it being a new year. So yes, Joe, we do have a chart for you. This from BBC News this week, actually, talking about we've had everything from 4% to here 7.6 from the Halifax, 7.3%. I mean, it's no dispute that the property market's had a great year, not least due to the various incentives that the government's put in place, the furlough scheme, stamp duty, of course, and low rate finance, of course, and 90% loan to value. I was just question really, Joe, moving on from that is this sustainable?
Yeah, I think, my view is that house prices and property prices, they have the ups and downs on these graphs, primarily because of the state of the market, the economy, our country, what the government of the day has planned, and in our case, this year, starting on the 3rd, 2020 has a major part to play in it, and that major part is obviously the pandemic and people's mind, thoughts, and sets, and that's what's driven these prices, because people had time on their hand to reevaluate their life, their circumstances, and say to themselves, this is what we want to do. And I think, to be honest with you, it's hard to even think what 2021 is going to bring. I'm sure there'll be points that you'll make in terms of your graphs and so forth. But the reality of it is property, and it's part of the reason my passion exists with it, and part of the reason I've spent 40 years of my life doing, because I think it's one of the safest and the best investments you ever make.
It's interesting, actually. It's the highest growth, Joe, for 6 years, and if you look at it from March onwards, the rate is actually 5.3%. So there's no doubt about it that the government stimulus is what's rocketed the property market this year.
Yeah, I mean, again, the stimulus has given comfort to people. Let's say that the government didn't do all that it has tried to do, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of people out there, or a percentage of people that are going to be, hard done by and not happy with what they've done. But broadly speaking, and I'm sure a lot of people can't really criticize that, broadly speaking, they took the bull by the horn and did what they could, and we could have been in a worse scenario than we are. But they've supported the people of this country, and they've supported the concept and helped them through. And yes, that stimulus has driven people to make decisions that may be long-term decisions, things that they never actually thought they would be doing. So I think, I think there's no question that the stimulus has helped.
And it's interesting that the rise in December alone was 1% in just the 1 month. So this suggests that this is people finally getting these deals through for their to break the stamp duty or to meet the stamp duty deadline. Presumably, I would have thought.
And the clock is ticking on that. March is coming quicker than you think, and so literally, I think come tomorrow, being Monday, they will be, just sort of out under starters orders, and they'll be running out, literally to try and make sure that they can meet the deadline. So the pressure is going to be on the legal profession more so. Perhaps followed by the banks and the building society to make sure that that money is there for the completions.
Question then I suggest is, what next really, and what has 2020 taught us? Interesting piece from Mike Day in Property Industry Eye, talking about the fact that he thinks that the pandemic will have the biggest impact on the property industry since the advent of the internet, which is an interesting point to make, talking in particular about the way that estate agency and the way that we transact property will change as a result of all this.
Yeah, well, Mike Day is a long-term estate agent himself. I know Mike, and Mike is one of these chaps that's been in the industry probably as long as I have, and has done a variety of roles throughout that time, and has seen with his own eyes, let alone the experience, that how the industry has changed, and I have too, and I actually go along with his plan. In fact, I think him actually bringing it out to the forefront is long overdue, because when you look back at just the last 5-6 years, the market and the industry has started to change dramatically, and some of the big names had disappeared off the high street. Some of the agencies had closed their operations on the high street, especially considering the cost of the high street and the fact that the internet had changed all the marketing pool in terms of people's way that they were searching and looking for property. The days of sitting in the high street and then somebody walking through the door and saying, I'd like to come and buy a house, has long gone. I mean, you don't see people literally coming through the door anymore, apart from the fact that in this last year, the pandemic would have said, we don't want to go in there. But prior to that, people had actually stopped coming through the door, because the portals is where they started to go. They'd search on the portal, and the agent and the buyer would actually meet at the property, at the premises. And it's the only time you probably needed to see you if there was a specific reason for them to come in. But other than that, pretty much everything got done online and sort of, on the phone, as so to speak. So the industry has, taken a huge change, and I think it's coming. In fact, when I look back at it, back in the early days, I was in the US, and the US have been on this bandwagon of change way before. We were just a little bit scared of change in our country, the custom, the style, and the way things were. I mean, I remember working for I won't name the company, but a franchise operation, which is US driven, and I know that this year, being 21, there's the hint. They will be looking to milk that under the marketing strategy. But the reality is that they were forward thinking when I was, back 15, 16, 20 years ago, maybe even longer now, when they were starting to say that, you can work from one central base, and people can work from home, and brokers can, work from different places, and multi-listings and all sorts of things. And I think that's coming. And it's coming quick and thick and fast now here in the UK.
Yes, actually, the estate agent's office in our village here just been closed, and now going to be a cake and ice cream shop. So, but it's certainly true that the agents' offices seem to be closing nearly as fast as the pubs are.
Well, we always have to have a little bit of sweetening to add to the end of the estate agency. Cakes and coffee and all that sort of stuff is always a welcome thought. I mean, what else can you drown your sorrows in, other than a nice piece of cake and a cup of coffee in the middle of the day, apart from maybe a snide shot here or there. but yes, I mean the high street in itself is changing and changed dramatically, and it's going to change even more as time goes on. We were thinking of similar things here in the high streets locally and driving through, and Christmas Eve, just before Christmas, Paul, we took a drive into London, and the kids wanted to go and see the lights, and I have to say it was very nice to see. It was very sparse, but equally very thought-provoking and very how can I say it was very solemn. It was sort of very quiet and not the London that we'd always see in the hustle and the bustle and so forth. And so change is, I think, the operative word probably. Thank God that it will be the change that will be the operative word, Paul, and not the byword that has become part of one of the Oxford's new editions over the last years called Brexit. Because we did that and we got that out of the way.
Finally,
so that,
yes.
that won't be the thing.
How do you think Brexit will affect the property market? Obviously, it gives a bit more certainty about where we're going, but do you think it'll have an impact?
Well, I think I walked right into that one, actually, didn't I? Thanks for that. The impact or the lack of impact that it will have, I think, is been saved by the day, saved by the bell, because I think I have to say it was one of my fears for 2021, thinking that we've had pandemic 2020 and the next byword is going to be not lockdown, but Brexit again. And we thought we'd got rid of Brexit a couple of years before and it had all gone quiet while they were doing their little battle. And the pandemic had actually come along and sort of suppressed Brexit. And I think it really did put it to bed. And well done to the people that actually eventually got there and did that. And I think for the property market, the fact that the Brexit has been done is actually excellent news. It does give a direction. It takes that one more excuse out of the shopping basket, and it's back on the shelf, back doing what it's supposed to do, and we can get on with it. And there is certainty, and there's not just certainty in the property market, but there's certainty in pretty much everything people wanted to do. And it's going to have, and it's still going to have some sort of an effect, Paul. I'm not saying it's not, but it's probably not as going to be as powerful as it could have done.
And obviously we've got the technology now as well. So just on our point about the future of a estate agency, I mean, we've got the virtual viewings, which in theory, what with the information pack and everything else, you wouldn't necessarily need to leave your own home to go and buy another home.
That's very true. But I have to say that being slightly old-fashioned, I would definitely encourage that take a drive, stand in the spot, stand in front of whatever it is that you're looking at, even if you can't go inside and do the viewing, which I'm sure as the year goes along will begin to change as the vaccines and so forth start to hit and people start to get comfort in knowing that this pandemic thing is maybe a sort of a thing of the past. But I can't really encourage and endorse the reality, the touchy, the feely, the see, the old adage of standing in the spot, because I think you might be surprised. I often, in fact, I'm always surprised. I'm not even as often surprised that when I've been asked to look at something, and I try to do as much as I can nowadays and have done over the last several months online. I've still driven down, as you know. I mean, I've driven to the other side of the country. Literally, if it takes me 3 hours to stand there for 2 minutes, just so that I can actually get the full picture. And I would encourage anyone and everyone that are doing any viewings, virtual or not, take a Sunday drive and go and have a look. And check the area out, check the location out. It's very paramount, and in the grand scheme of what you do.
Good advice, thank you, Joe. As always, we've talked a lot over the last few months, certainly, about people moving out of the inner cities and moving into more rural locations. And Rightmove, bless them, have given us a list of the places that we're all apparently desperate to live in, including somewhere you know, Joe, a Somerset town of Bruton. Apparently, this is the place where most of us are searching to look for a new home. Allegedly, 72% year-on-year increase in searches for the Somerset town of Bruton. What's so special about Bruton? You know the place.
Yeah, Bruton. In fact, towards the end of last year, a good friend of mine asked me to make a journey to Bruton in Somerset, and I took the opportunity to that particular place. And first of all, it is a very, very cute little village. I mean, if 72% of the people searching at Bruton, I think Bruton will become just, it might even get sort of subsidence, because the number of people that'll start walking around in Bruton, it might make the little tiny streets and the little road a little bit unbearable, and it may not be as cute as it is, because then they'll have to start to put highways and byways to try and accommodate all the traffic that's going to go. So, you know, I do feel for Bruton in that sense. But I also would like to say that Bruton is a very cute, very pretty little place. Got some lovely areas and some of the nicest. And I think fundamentally it's about the connectivity pool that Bruton has been brought up, the train connection into London and the time, and just the general feel of the country air and so forth. The reason for my journey back there was, in my wisdom and in my time of property buying and selling, I bought a property there probably 30 odd years ago, just on a whim, thinking that one day it might be quite nice to go and live there. I didn't think it at 40 years later it will become the right place, and maybe in hindsight I should have kept it. But all I can say is that it hadn't actually shifted up in house prices as much as I thought it had, because the same property was bought about £60,000 back then. And today it's probably worth about £230,000. So not a huge over the 30 years of growth. But I think Rightmove's little prediction of everybody moving there may have a different status now, and might find that in the next 2 years it will actually jump up as much as it had jumped up in 30 years, just because the demand and the supply may change. But a lovely place, not difficult to get to in that sense. And if you like a nice long country drive, then do go. And it's got some nice little eateries, and it's I suppose the nearest place that I could compare it to is around where we are. We're in Buckinghamshire here, and our places like Cookham and Eton. I mean, Eton is a forgotten place in more ways than one. And every time I go there, I often ask myself, what a beautiful place it is, and yet it's right at your doorstep. So I think all of these kind of areas are now of interest because of the way that people can actually work from home, and the internet provides the access to making life a bit easier.
Yes, they've added onto the list Pitlochry in Scotland, also Aylesford in Kent, Silcombe in Devon, and Lightwater in Surrey. So it's definitely the case that people are looking to move out of the conurbations.
Yeah, and I think that's been the part of the driver of your graph at the beginning, of what house prices are doing and where people are moving to, and why they're moving. And it's not just the quality of life and health. Education and well-being of children is a huge key factor in people's life, and what quality of life they want to have for their children, and the type of education. And it is people have talked about postcode lotteries, and some of these places that we talk about are the postcode lotteries for the right type of schooling, etc., for the children. So I think it's very important that people take that on board. And I think the flexibility that has now been given has really driven this. There's always going to be something to drive it, but I think this pandemic has been the driver for the moves outwards and the possibility of working from home, considering the number of companies that have now said to people, oh, you just carry on working from home, because, and then they're disposing of their big offices because they now don't need those big offices. So the surplus of accommodation and the overheads only brings things much more closer for them. So yeah, I think these remote locations are going to become more and more attractive.
Certainly, life has changed dramatically in the last 12 months, that's for sure. A little bit of news that was not foreseen, I suppose, over the Christmas break, and that is that the UK government's got a bit of pressure to follow the Welsh lead on stamp duty and introduce a new tax hike on second homes. So this is the Welsh government charging an extra 1% surcharge on additional dwellings, moving up from 3 to 4%. Buy-to-let landlords and landlords in general, they're under a lot of pressure. It seems like the profit's moving out of what they're doing, and that's not going to be good news, is it?
No, but it's unfortunate that the comparison is Wales to England, and just look at the values of the house prices that one is looking to get in Wales, in comparison to perhaps the same that somebody would use in London, and there is a far cry. And so when you look at these extra costs, I think the Welsh government may be able to sort of justify it a bit more, because it will help their bottom line figures. Will it actually inspire and move people out and stop them buying in London? I doubt it, even if they did do that. I remember, and it's probably a wrong comparison, but I'll use it anyway. I remember that we started the congestion charge in London, God knows how many years ago. The idea was that it would stop people driving into London. It never stopped people driving into London. They've upped it a couple of times, and it still hasn't. They then added on another emissions charge, and it still doesn't stop people driving into them. Where there's a will, there's always a way, and people will continue to find the route and the way that they want to achieve and get somewhere. That can't change. And the good thing about that for governments is that, because they know that is the mentality, that is the mindset of the people, that they know that they can add a pound here and a pound there, and somebody will pay it. You look back at the lottery, for example, Paul, many years ago, when we were both a little bit younger and wiser. People started this lottery. It was used to be a pound for your strip of numbers, or whatever it was, and now people are still paying. But the lottery brings in absolutely millions and millions of pounds, and did that stop people? The answer is no, it never did, and it probably never will. And I think the Welsh government is right to maybe do that, because it may help the bottom line. Whether we actually follow that route, I think we've got other costs and other expenses that you need to consider. And if we really want to put the housing market on its knees, then maybe they will put lots of interest rates up. But I remember the interest rates, and I'm sure there'll be viewers that will come back to me and say, I remember it being even higher, but I remember them at sort of 15-16%, and it never discouraged people then. So I'm not sure what is going to be, but as I've always said in this program and this channel that we were working with in Property Matters, is that basically all successive governments have always used property as the yardstick, the property as the sledgehammer to go and do anything they want to do in the property market or in people's home, because it is the hub. It is what people do. People buy and develop and spend time in their home, and that's where the money's going to come from.
Yeah, it's suggested that the funds that would raise will be put into the bottom end of helping to get more affordable housing and things like that. So in some ways, it might actually be quite beneficial in general.
Yeah, like I said, they use it for their bottom line, and how they use that bottom line, it is there. I mean, yes, in this case, they'll say it's going to help more social housing, and housing is forever a huge need, no matter where it is. And especially with the pandemic, more and more people are happy to travel further afield, and family connections, and families are moving. It's not just, I mean, recently I've heard of a situation where it was not just the one person, it was 4 or 5 members of the family who had 4 or 5 different households, all decided that time was right for them to all move to another location, another town, way further away from where they were, because it added value for life. The other thing is that you have to understand that probably one of these subjects that we'll cover later on is, a lot of people took interest only mortgages 25, 30 years ago, and there hasn't really been another way of dealing with that. And that has been an underlying driver for some of these moves, apart from the pandemic, where people are selling up to literally clear off whatever they had and buy somewhere cheaper, more remotely, and actually get rid of the noose of the mortgage around their neck and say to themselves, I can now do this, and I don't have, there's no other way. So that in itself will be a huge driver, I think, in the next 5 years going outwards, which is why the Midlands and so forth have seen a lot of surge in prices and property, purely because people can't afford to pay that off, and lenders at some stage, some of them will extend those, but sooner or later there's going to come to a point where they're going to say, we're not going to do it anymore. You either sell your house and pay us back because that's what you owe us, and what do? You either sell your house, pay them back and go and rent, or take control of that situation now and buy somewhere more remotely. So there's a lot of other things that have been long in the background that are coming forward now, and that's something that needs to be considered.
I guess, putting it simply, all the time that buying is cheaper than renting, the market's only going to go one way.
Yeah, and I've always stated that time and time again. The graph sometimes stops for a little while just to take a breather. It's like climbing a big hill. You get up a little while, and then you need to take a breather. Then you stop, and then eventually you catch your breath, and you think, right, up I go again. The reverse gear actually hasn't really happened, though. The market and the people would love that to happen. It's not going to happen. I mean, I can't think of the number of people that have told me, I'm waiting till the house prices drop. And I've always said, you carry on waiting, because it's not going to happen.
Because if you look, go back to that original graph, Joe, if you even look there, 2009, where everything really did go off the cliff, obviously, as we well know. But if you look at the growth up until 2020, it's been a real positive story, hasn't it?
Well, there you are. That's the step up. It slows down, and then up you go again, and then it'll have another little stay off, and then we'll go up again. But yes, 2007, 2008, a financial crash, brought the. If you look at the statistics, and I'm sure you'll dig them out, but in 2008, there was hardly any house sales by comparison to maybe 2005, 2006, 2007, the financial crash happened, 2008. I don't think there was even a murmur in the marketplace. It just went flat. And it stayed flat, Paul, for I think almost 7 years. The first little line that we saw, which was a huge graph upwards, taking your graphs on board, was 2014, and it just went off the Richter scale. 2014, 2015. And then if you look at those 2016, 2017, 2018, it had a bit of a slowdown. And there you are in 2020, back shooting right up again. So, it's been continuous there. And you can see even on your graph there, look at 2014, it absolutely peaked from 27, 28, where it was right on its knees. So the current circumstances, the economies, the governments of the world scenario, all have an effect. And I will always go back to say that, we are an island. And now that we are, of course, a sovereign state, an independent state, our demand is going to be even greater in a different way. Because there is always the attraction for the United Kingdom by people from abroad, and people that want to invest here and so forth. And, we kept our currency, which was brilliant, never became part of the euro, and that kept us, in control. And of course, now we're taking control back of our sovereignty. And I think that will only stimulate the market. It's not a general view, by the way. It's not, I'm going to get some of my mates phoning me up and say, oh, you said this and we said that and blah, 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 and so forth.
Brave words.
I'm just putting a caveat that I'm talking about property. And in terms of property, I think those things will be seen as some driving factors and comfort factors for those that are investing.
So time to polish the old crystal balls, Joe, and let's have a look at 2021. So, talk about put a finger in the air and wonder what's going to happen. If you look at just some of these statements on here, so basically most of the agencies, Halifax, Nationwide, etc., saying that the property market's going to fall off a cliff at the end of the stamp duty holiday on the 31st of March. However, they are also predicting that prices will rise by 4%, as we revealed some weeks ago. Zoopla saying that it will slow down, but they don't think they'll fall before the end of next year, that being 2021, of course. But look at this one at the bottom here, the Centre of Economics and Business Research, CEBR, predicting that house prices could fall by 14%. I suppose what that's really telling us is that nobody really knows what's going to happen.
No, and I think it's a bit like my caveats, Paul. They'll say that this and they'll say that that's going to happen, but the reality of it is that no one really knows. We didn't know what was happening in 2020 as to what that was going to bring in, and we certainly don't think that 2021 is going to give us a clear direction as to where. The government has a furlough to the end of April. We're still carrying the ball in our hands from 2020 into 2021 as far as the pandemic is concerned, and its sort of throwbacks and things that has happened from the pandemic. The virus is still finding the virus, the results of the vaccines and so forth is still going to be there. So I think the first quarter is still going to be healing some of the wounds of 2020. I think thereafter you could take a stock into the 31st of March when the stamp duty holiday ends. And the government may take a view on that at that time and realize that maybe, it needs to stimulate the market again and maybe extend that. We don't know the answer to that. That'll be probably a fairly nice, clever move on their part if they did, because that will take us into 2021 on a good way, and Britain is going to build its way out of the issues that it's got on its hands, and that's what's going to happen there.
Well, they have said that will be the end of the stamp duty holiday, but then there's been plenty of U-turns already in the last 12 months. So it is anybody's guess, isn't it?
This is why I said we don't know the answer to that yet. And kids are sitting at home thinking they were going to go back to school tomorrow, but they're not. So we can shine the crystal ball as much as we like, but unfortunately, Mystic Meg hasn't got the answers yet. So we'll just have to, and nor is Mystic Joe. So we just have to go with the flow on that one, I think.
What impact do you think unemployment might have on property? Because obviously the furlough scheme ends at April, and we've seen already that the numbers are dramatically increasing. There's the whole of the hospitality and leisure industry in real trouble at the moment. Is that card yet to play?
I think it is going to play, and I'll just bring back a little thing I just said earlier on, and that is that unemployment and the change of life and the change of circumstances in people's financial status will all be drivers as to what the property market will do nationwide. And so if you say that unemployment becomes a big thing, that will also drive people to think, well, actually, maybe now is a good time. And my age is such, and that I sell up and move a bit further out, get rid of the cost around my neck, the mortgage, etc. And the mortgage itself will become the same issue because, like I said, 25, 30 years ago, people started to take a lot of interest only mortgages. And so all of those things will be drivers of what the housing market will do, and will do in the remoter areas generally. I think that will be very important to take on board. And so, nobody wants anybody to have, but the high streets changed. Look what happened. I mean, there was a tsunami of collapses just before Christmas when, Arcadia Group decided that they sort of wanted to call it a day, and all the big names just tumbling. All the names that certainly I've grown up with, and I'm sure you've seen yourself, are names that are now the past. I mean, who thought that Amazon would be your best buddy now? And literally in the last 10 years, where did that come from? How did that happen? And everybody's goods and things were delivered the next day. They order it one day, arrive the next day, didn't have to move from their chair. Change has happened, Paul, and quietly right under our noses. And I think that is still going to be prevalent as we go forward.
Sonny Kapoor's got in touch. Sonny says, my opinion is similar to Joe's. Saving on stamp duty, added price increase on property, so removal will slow it for a while, but maybe a slight drop will continue the sales.
Yeah, I mean, that's thank you, Sonny, for that. Appreciate, and I'm glad to see at least somebody's watching me. I'm not the only fool on a Sunday morning that decided to get up and talk property. So thank you for that. I really appreciate your comment. And yes, stamp duty savings added to price increases. All of these things will make a difference in the global picture. But what I would say, and I've always said, is that whilst lots of hurdles are put in your way in the world of property, people will find a way to get over them and around them. It's been hereditary as many years than I can see. I've seen loads of obstacles that have been thrown in the way. And as time has gone on, we find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way, as I keep saying. And I think that, stamp duty, hold back, some of this is there now. It's going to come to an end in March. But the government saw that as a stimulus. They realized that was going to be the one that's going to drive people to sort of, push property going forward and so forth. And property is the answer, in terms of whichever your personal moves are going, whatever your personal circumstances are.
He also adds a second point: interest rates are unlikely to go to 6% for years, so can't see a fall in prices of 14%. Interesting point.
Are you looking for a slot on my show, Sonny? Absolutely. I tend to agree with you. I can't imagine that from the low interest rate that we have at this moment and enjoy, if the government wanted to put a noose around their neck and hang themselves of the good things that they've been doing over the last 12 months or so, then put the interest rates up, get the Bank of England to do that, and you will not survive. And so you're absolutely right. And will it see the fall of 14% in house prices? I don't think so. I think there will be a continuous steady rise, albeit it may not be as it's been in the last year or so.
And Kamal says, good show. So just to balance the whole affair.
Thank you, Kamal. He does a fantastic job on Mumbai News. Kamal holds a program of his own, and he reports to Mumbai. And so I'm sure we'll have him on our show one of these days.
Lovely. Look forward to that. Let's move on to the big topic of the week as we rapidly run out of time, as always. But no one could have noticed, or failed to notice, should I say, the queues and the popularity outside DIY stores this last 9-12 months. people seem to be doing up and making do.
Hey, brilliant!
Smoothly shoehorned it in there. Yes,
Well,
DIY is what we're talking about, isn't it?
I should have said, let's go and all invest in the DIY stores, and that might have been some sort of insider trading or something they want to say. But the reality is, Paul, I have continued. You can go back as many of these programs that we've talked about. I've always, and I will continue to say that people need to invest, in their home, and this time that people have had at home has done exactly that. And a lot of the blokes have probably just done it to get out of down to the feet of the other half, because it just means that they can go in their shed and bang away on some pieces of wood or something that they're supposed to be doing. But joking aside, yes, it's been amazing, isn't it, really? And I think because they've had time, they're at home, they're either on furlough, or they companies have told them to work from home. What do they look at? They look at that investment. So they've obviously been listening to my little tips about making sure that they, protect their main home, their investment, the hub, the thing that, and here is the spokes of the hub, Paul, that I speak about, and off the home comes all these DIYs, whether it's going to be painting, decorating, or fencing, or whatever the things that need to be done around the house are being done now, and that's fantastic for the DIY stores. Unfortunate for the others. A friend of mine, brother from another mother, has a superstore in the local town, and I was only saying to him that the number of people, and he was saying what a surge there has been in his store alone on the DIY products that has focused people, let alone the fireworks on New Year's Eve, which he had a phenomenal time with. But other than that, there's been a lot of other areas of good news, and the DIY stores have had good news in terms of where people have been, always thinking I must do that tomorrow, and that tomorrows have ended. And they've had to do them. And I've got a list of my own at home. I know it's building quite nicely. That's the task for us in 2021, to deal with some things that are in our own home that we want to deal with. And I think it's a great way to invest in your home. It's a great way to encourage that market. The queues have been phenomenal. I mean, I tried to get into one of the big stores the other day, and the queues was better than the food store, to be honest with you. There was probably less now at the food store, and there were more at the DIY stores.
If you were thinking about saleability of a property, so in other words, if you were making your house appealing, you often talked about curb appeal. If you were going to do or embark on some DIY for a property, what are the first things that you should really look to do that's going to have a financial benefit to the value of the property? For the average DIYer, obviously.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, I would suggest to every single person, step across the road, look at your house from the other side of the street, and ask yourself, is that somewhere where you'd like to live and buy? And I say that because when we live somewhere, we kind of get used to it. We just don't think about, you walk in and don't think about the outside. The only person that ever thinks about the outside is the person that is looking to be inside. So in other words, someone who's thinking about buying your home. So the inside of the home is very, very important. And I applaud a lot of people. I've been in lots and lots of houses, and people have done fantastic jobs inside, but they kind of forget the outside. They forget the outside, and they forget the neighbors. And if you do yours, then hopefully the neighbors will be encouraged to do theirs. And if the neighbors all start to do theirs, you can encourage your town, maybe your councillors, to make sure that the streets start to look nicer. And I always think, when I've traveled across Europe, how nice the streets are. Even the motorways, they've actually managed to prune the trees down. And in ours, we just can't be bothered. And I just think that, everything we buy with our eyes, And when we look at something from the outside, and my argument there is also with shops and retailers, is that once they put the sign up, they start the till ringing, they actually forget to go across the road and step back and look and say, my God, my fascia needs bulbs because they've been blown for the last 2.5 years or 3 years. It's not light anymore. But when they first put the fascia up, Paul, they were very proud. They'd stand outside and go, look at my fascia, it's fantastic. You know, it's better than next door neighbors. But they actually forget. So my tip to everybody is step outside, walk across, and turn around and look at your place and say to yourself, what does it need doing from the outside? The soffit might need painting, the guttering might need doing, the windows might need cleaning, the garden might need, pruning, the rubbish might need removing. And all of a sudden, it's an instant happiness because you can see it. I always find instant happiness in the grass being cut because all of a sudden the lines in the grass looks attractive. You just think, oh, even though I don't do my grass cutting, by the way, but that's by the by. It's just just nice to see it. You drive home and you think, oh, well, the grass.
There are staff to do that, Joe, aren't there?
Absolutely. What can you do? So I think that would be and it will continue to be my tip. Always stand outside your home and make sure that it looks appealing to others, just as it did to you when you bought it many years ago.
Yeah. So look at the outside first. And to be fair, not many people think about the outside. It's always what can I do to the inside. So that's a great tip. So thank you for that. We're out of time, Joe. Talking about curb appeal, I'm particularly impressed with the new look for 2021. And I notice, obviously, we've gone for the casual as well without the tie for the first time on Property Matters. Is this the way that we're going in the future?
Watch this space, Paul. That's all I'm going to say. Watch this space.
And on that bombshell, we must end.
Yeah, today was one of those days. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And a happy new year to everybody. We look forward to next week.
Indeed. Look forward to it. We're back, of course, every Sunday morning at 10 a.m, right the way through 2021. Looking forward to it very much. As always, Joe, thank you very much indeed for all your pearls of wisdom. And we'll be back next week. Thank you for watching.